Okay, so Overwatch. Overwatch is a game that I have played since the open beta back in early 2016. And I remember being so enthralled with it when it first came out. All of these fun characters to play, these new maps to play on, all of these exciting new concepts to play with and see what was new. It was, at the time, my favorite game. But slowly as time went on, I started growing out of the game more and more. And to this day, I couldn't really put my finger on it. All these things that were slowly ruining the enjoyment of the game for me, all coming together to this point where I barely even boot the game anymore. So, basically, in these past 3 years, what has happened? Why do I not have fun with Overwatch anymore, like I used to? Is there a concrete reason? I mean, not really. All of these emotions and different things came together to kind of drive people away from the game. It's not just a me problem, it's a community problem. Everyone who used to play Overwatch in this player base of 50 million people all slowly got driven away from the game for one reason or another. And today, I'm gonna set out to find out why. So, to begin, let's talk a little about Overwatch and how it came to be. So, originally, Overwatch was announced November of 2014 during Blizzard's BlizzCon that year. They had this beautiful cinematic trailer that was actually fully animated of all these characters in bright colors and cool stuff happening. It was pretty cool, pretty cartoonish. It was said to be a first-person shooter, a team-based first-person shooter, with all these different characters that you could play as. Over 20 characters on release. So, what led to Overwatch being made? In 2013, Blizzard announced that they were canceling their new MMO, which was only known as Titan at the time. And this was a project that Blizzard had been working on for 7 years. So, a lot of assets were just kind of thrown away, and this entire team of people on the Blizzard staff just went their separate ways and worked on other projects. But a small team at Blizzard of about 40 people, led by this guy named Jeff Kaplan, were given a goal. Come up with a new game in like a few months, then come back, see if they'll make a new game. So, after some brainstorming, Jeff Kaplan came to the idea of, hey, what if we make a team-based shooter based on different heroes instead of classes, unlike games like TF2 or Call of Duty, to make it more fresh and exciting for the players. So, they took this idea, along with some of the assets that they had developed for Titan, to make this proof of concept for the Blizzard execs. And they showed it to them, and they were greenlit to make a full game. So this was the first intellectual property that Blizzard had made since StarCraft. And StarCraft came out in like 2000? So it's been quite a while since they've made anything new in the universe. The Blizzard universe, that is. So after thinking about it a little more, and after using some of the assets from Titan, the team came to this idea of making a first-person shooter which was set in the near future on Earth. So there were robots and humans hanging out with cool technology and science. So they ran with this idea of a near-future shooter with bright cartoony colors, different fun and well-written characters, and they ran with it. And so, slowly, as open and closed betas happen, around rolled the day of release. May 24th, 2016. I remember actually sitting at my computer with Overwatch downloaded, waiting to get into the game. I was so excited after playing the beta, after trying out all these new characters. I couldn't wait to try playing with all my other friends who bought the game. And it went off without a hitch. Well, I mean, it was half hour late to launch, but that's better than Diablo 3. And for that entire year, it was really great getting new characters and new maps. But as time went on, as I already said, I started growing away from the game, and so did basically all of my other friends who played the game with me. So what led to this? Well, I kind of have an idea. So, this wasn't really a problem in year one, since everything we had seen in year one was new and innovative. But as 2017 rolled around, the summer of 2017, we got our first repeat event with the Summer Games 2017. Now, no one really cared at the time that this event was being brought back. In fact, it was a good thing. We got to play, the old mode Lucio Ball again. It was coming back, and everyone liked it the first time, so why not do it again? Well, this kept happening as the game went on. The same Halloween event, the same Christmas event, the same Origins event, the same anniversary event. It became almost like, instead of being a special thing that we didn't know was going to happen, it became a schedule of when the next holiday event was going to happen, and when the new loot boxes and new cosmetics were coming out. It started to lose its meaning. This also kind of coincided with new game modes coming out in a less frequent fashion. When Lucio Ball came out, that was the first new mode in the game ever, besides competitive, which was promised from day one, but it wasn't ready on release. So that was the first new mode that we had ever gotten. And then Halloween rolled around, and we got this new PvE type deal with Junkenstein's Revenge. And that was pretty fun. It was almost like playing, Call of Duty Zombies or like Borderlands, anything like that. And at this point, Blizzard realized that they had a lot of modes in the game that they weren't really using other than during holidays. So they introduced the arcade. And now the arcade was this new side grade thing that you could add to the game, where you could play quick play, or you could play these new special modes that weren't exactly quick play, but still had their own flavor. Like there was Mystery Heroes, where every time you would die and respawn in, you would get a new hero. But just like quick play, all these modes didn't really have a incentive to playing. Where's the incentive to play? So, after doing some research, I found that games that go on forever, like these team-based games like TF2 or Call of Duty or Overwatch, add small incentives while playing so that every match feels good to play. Like after winning a quick match in Call of Duty, you might rank up and get a new perk or thing to put on your gun, like a sight or a muzzle or whatever. Basically, this feeling of something always being right around the corner, something new for you to do, is something that is needed in a free-to-play game to give players the incentive to keep playing. This isn't really a problem with story-driven games, because the reason to keep playing, the incentive to get to the end, is that there is an end. So in Overwatch, there was a pretty easy example of how to give incentives with loot boxes. And loot boxes were cool at first. When the game first came out, loot boxes were pretty plentiful. You'd get them quite quickly as you leveled up until about level 25. You'd get 4 items in each loot box, and these items could be anything from sprays to put on the wall during games, voice lines to use or taunts to use. And then the biggest thing was skins. And skins were the main incentive to keep playing the game. Now, The problem with this incentive is that it doesn't really mean anything since there's an end. Unlike in TF2 where you can keep trying different loadouts on all the 9 different classes, and every game's going to be different if you make it different, or in Call of Duty, where every game is going to be different if you try a new gun, with new perks, new attachments, new kill streaks, whatever it may be. Those are different because the player has the power to make the games different. In Overwatch, these incentives can be bought with real money and eventually run out. And once you run out of incentives to play the game, there's no real point to playing anymore other than for your enjoyment. Now, of course, the timed exclusive skins and sprays and voice lines were a nice little addition to the game when they came out. There were so many new things in each seasonal loot box that you were pretty incentivized to, buying the loot boxes so that you could get everything you wanted and then just keep playing the game. Also, these loot boxes were seasonal. They didn't get added to the main loot box forever. They came for a month, you got what you wanted, or didn't, and then they went away. The problem with that is there's this big argument in most games with freemium content that making things limited time or exclusive or saying that they're on sale adds urgency and makes the consumer want to buy them rather than earn them. In addition to this, if it's much harder to earn an item rather than just buy it, and there's an option to buy it, why wouldn't you just do that instead? So this all funnels back into the idea of the seasonal loot box in Overwatch, where you could try to buy the skins that you wanted, since the loot box is completely random. So you could open a loot box, hoping that you get that new legendary skin for Lucio, and then you open it, and you get nothing. Or maybe you open it, and you get a legendary, but it's not the one that you wanted, and it's not even one of the exclusives. It's just one in the base set that you didn't already have. This almost decentivizes gameplay and incentivizes the roulette. It not just only gave kids a reason to steal their parents' credit cards to buy stupid skins that mean nothing, but it also devalues a lot of the other stuff that was already in the game. Leveling up practically means nothing in Overwatch anymore. You level up and you get one loot box. Open up that loot box and you get 4 duplicate sprays, maybe one new thing, maybe if you're lucky, and then you go back to either playing or you quit. Where endless games kind of have this cycle where you need to kind of either give the player something to do or give the player an incentive to do something, the cycle just kind of ends. It's a cycle of nothingness, really. The last time they added stuff to the loot box was in 2018, when Blizzard World came out as a map in the game. So they added new sprays, some new voice lines, and then new legendary skins. But this was a very small batch of items, and pretty much you could get them in a couple of weeks if you really tried. So the main point of this part would be they haven't really added anything new to incentivize the player. When the player isn't incentivized to play the game, their interest dwindles. Once a player either gets fed up with what they're doing, or they don't feel like the next level is important to them, they quit, because there's no end. In addition to no incentive to really playing the game, the lack of new modes and interesting things to do also desensitizes the player into playing quick play, and, well, it doesn't pique their interest anymore. The game loses its fun. And like Reggie always said,
if it's not fun, why bother?
Now, the second part of this video comes down to personalized aspect of the game. Something that kind of leads into this social science aspect. Why is the game fun to individuals? But let's talk about the game itself. After you get into the game, in quick play, competitive, whatever you might be playing, you're given the option to choose one of the characters. They were corralled off into 4 categories. There were healers, or support at the time. damage, which was divided into two places, attackers and defenders, and then tanks, which has always been tanks. So right off the bat, you knew what role you could be playing and what those characters did. So you get into a game and you play and go about your business, learn the character, and you're done. After you learned all of the characters and what they do, you kind of get more of a sense of how to play the game, how to play against characters, how to play with characters, what ultimates to avoid, how to avoid them, stuff like that. And then, when Blizzard felt like it, they would introduce a new character. Now the first new character in the game was Ana. Very easy, simple character to understand. And in games, when something is easier to understand and less invasive, it's more inviting for a player to play. Like, it'd be much easier for me to get someone into, a game of Candy Crush than it would be for me to get someone into a game of Catan. The simpler it is to understand, the easier it is to play, and the easier it is to get someone into it. So, as characters got released, they became more and more batshit crazy. The newest character, Sigma, has his primary fire, which is 2 balls, but they only have 2, and then they reload infinitely, so you can only use 2 at a time for about every, a second and a half, and they explode, and they only go a short distance. So basically, you have to get up in someone's face almost like a shotgun, but not really, because then you would have to be hitting them in the head, because headshots still do more damage. Also, these left clicks are like black holes, so they kind of suck people in a little bit, but not too much, because that would be unfair. And then, of course, for his left shift, he throws a big rock, and the rock has a certain arc, so if you look up, the rock goes further, and depending on the range of the rock and how far away you hit someone with it, they get knocked down and pushed back further. And then his E is that he pulls out his shield that can eat certain projectiles, but not all projectiles, and depending on how much damage he eats, you can get a certain amount of health back, but the health goes down like Lucio's ultimate, so it doesn't last forever. And then, of course, his right click is that he pulls out his shield, but you have to hold right click to make it go further, but it can go forever, and it has a certain amount of health like Reinhardt's shield, but to call it back, you need to hit right click again to make it recharge. It doesn't recharge while it's on the field, even if it's not being hit. And then, his ultimate is that he pulls out a big black hole and he throws people in the air and then slaps them back down. It does exactly 50% of their health bar, no matter how much damage they're missing. But there's a big blue thing, a warning message on this ground that people can see so they can get out. Basically, there's like particle effects everywhere, and so you might notice the problem after me describing all of that. Some of the characters are very easy and straightforward to understand, while some are a lot more, I guess, skill intensive. There's a high skill floor on some characters, while some characters have a low skill floor, and vice versa. Some characters have a low skill ceiling, and then some characters have a high skill ceiling. Like, you take a hero like Soldier 76, who is very basic. His left shift is that he runs faster. His E is that he drops a field of healing that everyone on his team can use. And his right click is that he shoots rockets. And his basic fire is just a regular rifle. His ultimate, he gets aimbot. He locks on to everyone on the enemy team and shoots at them without missing. It's very easy to explain. And also, he's never had any changes to his kit. And that's a whole nother beast, is changing a character's kit. Imagine, if you will, you leave a game for a while. Imagine I am playing Mario Kart and I'm enjoying it, and then I leave Mario Kart. I come back 6 months later, and now, in Mario Kart, instead of being able to drift, you can do bounce hops, and the bounce hops make you go high in the air, but you lose speed. And when you lose speed, you lose charge. And losing this charge makes it so that you can't get items. Basically, changing the way that you play the game kind of, confuses players, and confusion leads to not having fun. The more confusing a game is in what's going on, the more rattled people will be when they lose. So now it's this whole new can of worms where every time you play the game again, you have to learn what the new characters do and learn what the old characters might have changed into. Also, these new crazy abilities that new characters get kind of make the old characters obsolete. Like, currently in Overwatch, there are much better options to play than Soldier 76. And Soldier 76's kit is so basic and boring, why would you want to play as him when you could play as a character like, you know, Doomfist, or Tracer, or Genji? Along with new characters, they add new maps to the game every once in a while. Now, the map pool when the game first came out was quite small. I believe there were about 10 maps when the game shipped. Now there's double that. And learning a new map is difficult because while some maps have been around forever and you know all of their ins and outs, they've been in events, they've been in, new game modes, whatever. You know those maps. But the new maps are kind of more confusing. What I'm saying here is that the main problem in new maps is confusion. And you could say this is a problem with every game that has live updates with new maps and new characters. But in other games, like, TF2 or Call of Duty, the fundamentals of characters never change, so you always know what to play and how to play it. Like, oh, this guy has a sniper, and he's holding this sightline on this new map, so that must be a good sniper sightline. So you start to experiment. How do I get to the sniper sightline? Run back here, go up the stairs, and kill the guy who's sniping you. Problem solved. So with a game that's always ever changing, I guess I'll use Smash terminology because I know it. It's hard to read something if you don't know what you're reading. It's something where if you're trying to hop back in, it's non-user friendly. Unlike most other games which remain unchanged, or at least change, but don't change a lot of mechanics, so it's easy to, get back into something. This is mostly a problem for more casual players on, like consoles or whatnot. But let's say I play Overwatch a lot, and these problems don't faze me because I keep up with them. So, I tend to play the meta. Whenever a character gets a rework, it's because, they've been pretty underpowered for a long time, or they've been pretty overpowered for a long time. So, how does the Overwatch team handle changing characters? There's a joke in the community that they have 3 buttons in their HQ. One that nerfs a character into the ground, one that makes them incredibly powerful, and then the third button nerfs Mercy. So I'll keep this brief, but there are a lot of times in the game where a certain character is played ad nauseum for a couple weeks until they can get patched again. Or there will be months on end where a character is so bad that if you ever play them in a match, you get flamed for it. Let's recap. Confusion to the player makes games less fun for them, because learning how to play the game should be a one-time thing. Of course, learning new maps or new characters should be a thing that you have to do every once in a while if you want to keep playing the game. But learning a new character, or learning an old character, or learning a new map every month, or learning the new meta every month can get kind of repetitive and boring and sometimes frustrating. And instead of, just enjoying playing the game by either yourself or with your friends, the game more or less becomes, how to break the meta. How to, find what's going to be the next broken thing, rather than seeing what you can do this game with an old character that you like. Alright, part 3. Here it comes. Competitive time. The competitive mode was an offshoot of the quick play mode, obviously, and it used some small incentives to get the player to play in competitive. First off, you could show your ranks on your profile, and also, after getting a certain amount of competitive points from playing competitive, you could get a golden gun. You could buy a golden gun for any character that you wanted at any time, even if you didn't really play them a lot during competitive, but you at least got the competitive points, so you could prove that you are at least decent at the game. And this incentive for playing competitive has not changed for the past 3 years. So I could talk about, the incentivized portion of the player base again, like I did in part 1, or I could talk about competitive, which kind of, feeds back into part 2. where learning new things kind of frustrates or demoralizes the player. But that's on a personal basis. And competitive for, this team-based game became a lot more team-based. Team video games, for a long time, have had a long-term effect on the internet, really. And, people's performance in games and people's social interactions online. Basically, if you're playing a team game and you enjoy the people you're playing with and you're communicating with them, you might really, enjoy playing with them. So you meet them online and you start talking to them more and friend them, add them to your little server or whatnot, talk to them more. And it builds these really small, close-knit communities that play games together. And of course, this game was no different. Playing competitive with a group was always a lot more fun than playing by yourself. Playing with people you already knew made it so that you could play around their strengths and their weaknesses, and your strengths and weaknesses, and always be communicating and play the game to the best of your ability. But as the player base has kind of dwindled, it becomes harder and harder to play this game as a team. Competitive also brings out a lot of psychological problems on the internet. Like, of course, every game has, the troll or the bully, whatever it may be. This game has its negative players as well. That's not something to fault the game for, that's something to fault the internet for. However, the game itself can be faulted for not having a proper team-based system. So most features that have been added to the game to, improve the community were added because of competitive. There's, of course, the report system, which is in every game, but the report system didn't really, it didn't feel like people were getting reported. So, of course, they said they were going to work on reporting more. That didn't work, so they added this new avoid as teammate feature, where if someone was giving you a hard time in a game and you wanted to avoid them as a teammate, you could hit that button, then you wouldn't see them in your games anymore. That didn't really solve the problem because, find one bad person, avoid them as a teammate, find another bad person, and avoid them as a teammate. And this cycle would keep continuing, but there are only 2 avoid as teammate slots that you can use per week. And then, of course, you have the 2-2-2 system in competitive, which was also implemented into quick play, where you specify which role you want to play, then you get put into a queue for that role. And then once you get into the game, you can only play characters of that role. Now this happened because people would join into games in competitive and, auto-lock the damage characters because they felt that, the only way to carry the team is to play a damage character. So toxicity usually comes from, in the game, a person feeling like they are either doing better than everyone else or their teammates aren't doing what they should be doing. But it all boils back down to the ineffectiveness of reporting. And also, going back to Golden Guns, this system has been the same for 3 years, so people go into competitive treating it as though it is quick play. They don't really care, but there are players that do care. And, throwing a game or trolling people who want to play the game the correct way isn't very fun for the people who are trying to play the game the right way. So, on top of, the team gameplay aspect kind of being ruined by bad or negative players, there's also this idea that if you're losing a lot more than you would be winning. So the incentives for winning in competitive seem to be a lot less than what you could be losing if you lose competitive. Losing a competitive game means you lose a lot of competitive points, while winning at competitive means you get, your XP for winning, and the satisfaction of knowing you won. The competitive ladder in Overwatch is very, I guess, crazy. Staying in one place for a long time is pretty common because the points that you lose often outweighs the points that you win. So winning 2 games and losing 2 games often puts you either right back where you were when you started the game or further down than when you started. And seeing your competitive rank further down than when you started is obviously pretty upsetting for a lot of people. And people will take this in different ways. They'll either get sad, they'll get angry, or they'll get discouraged and not want to play the game anymore and just quit. And this kind of feeds back into, the problem with negative players. When people really want to win, they'll do certain things, and that's either, get really mad, get angry, get really sad and not want to communicate with their team, or you just give up and start trolling. Alright, fourth part. And this part is about the game's community as a whole. So why are people leaving Overwatch? It's the main question I've been trying to ask this whole video, and I still don't really have a solid answer. So I guess I'll turn to pro players, maybe the eSports scene. So quite frankly, pro players leave the game at their own volition. Obviously everyone is just a regular person, and everyone's reason is different, but it's for these reasons that I've been stating, either, the ineffectiveness to change, negativity, the staleness. People leave games for different reasons. Either they stop having fun playing, or the game frustrates them and so they don't want to play it anymore. Maybe they just want something new, so they play a different game and forget about the old ones. There's no real reason that the Overwatch community is dying, quote unquote. It's just people have their own personal preferences, so they go play something else. And of course, people can stay in touch with Overwatch with the Overwatch League, which is the eSports scene of Overwatch. Now, the eSports scene in Overwatch has become kind of an underground thing, really. The Overwatch League is sponsored by Overwatch themselves, and is played on TV, on stations like Disney XD and ESPN2, or even TBS. But this really has became the main Overwatch esports scene. And the esports scene shows off, the metas, the current metas that are popular in the game, how the players play the game. There's its own circle of drama that could be its whole own video, but it shows players at the top of the game playing the game to the best of their ability. And this is admirable, but you don't have the same sense of fun watching something as you would playing something. Watching people play Overwatch is a lot different than playing it yourself. For starters, esports is an ideal competition where everyone is participating and actively talking to each other, and they're at the top of their game, so everyone's really good. You can't really recreate those situations by yourself. It's sad to say, but esports kind of is the ideal vision of the game, at least in a virtual sense. So as people become less interested in playing Overwatch, they become less interested in watching Overwatch. Most people who stop playing Overwatch stop watching the Overwatch League. So as the player base dwindles, the viewer base dwindles. It's all kind of this give and take relationship. And it's not only the big competitive pro players either. It's regular people like me and my friends. So, what needs to be fixed in this game? What needs to be addressed in Overwatch 2? I guess the game needs to be more quick to change, address change in a better way, and make the game more fun for people to play. Of course, they are adding a new PvE mode, which adds a new way to play, which is a good start. But the game needs to add some incentivization to keep playing and have fun while playing. Be easy to addressing change so that it isn't hard to, learn the game and not get frustrated. And address competitive and the community, where, playing the game competitively can be fun for everyone and not super negative. I guess I learned that what makes a game a good game isn't really the community, it's more the inner workings of the game. It may not seem like it on the surface, but Overwatch is a flawed game. The cycle that it continues is kind of broken, and it slowly breaks people down, whether they realize that or not. I'm not saying that the game is, has broken characters or all of the maps are terrible or whatnot, people have their reasons for not liking things, but deep down, whether we realize it or not, this game is fun. It's really fun. But is it fun for a long time? Is it fun to play with friends? Is it fun to play competitively? It's something that needs to be addressed by the game developers and even the community. The game just needs to change the way it plays, I guess. In order to play a game forever and really like playing it, it just has to, give you something fun, or something to work towards, or something to talk with friends to about. And when it loses that, is it really, a good game anymore?